So let's just jump right into it and get directly to the point, which is, the development of a killer app, which actually translates into a successful company and a successful exit. That's usually what we're looking for. And so one of the great maxims of venture capital is nail it and scale it. Right? What are we going to do? What are we going to own? And how are we going to defend it? And how are we going to build it and make money out of it? So you've been hanging out with some interesting people at the dawn of a new technology. What's the thinking in your community about owning and controlling a space?
So I think there's a lot of applications for AR, as we've already seen. But I think what's really important here is looking at one specific avenue. Let's say you want to look at merchandise or shopping or maybe medicine, and zoning in on what is kind of needed in one of those realms, and then building an application around that versus building an entire platform and then saying that it's going to be useful for every single application. So for example, if you want to go shopping and you want to buy this dress and you're walking along the streets and you're wearing these glasses, what if those glasses kind of tell you more about this dress, the price or whatever, and you don't have to kind of go in or kind of physically play around, but you can have additional data on kind of with you at hand. That's one area that I'm interested in. But there's many avenues, but I think it depends on how you want to approach it.
Right.
Yeah.
Joe, you're a CRO, so this is everything to you, right? Where are you going to find the money to generate the revenue for the application that you guys have developed? And so what's your thinking in that area? What is your killer app?
You got to put it in context of the technology. So I think if I could take a second about what is AR, at least for us at Meta, it's immersive AR, because there's very different technology looking at Pokemon Go on a handheld device than it is medical imaging in a professional sense. So for us, being in Gen 2, having a software development kit that is in the hands of thousands of developers, we're really kind of learning and listening. What we understand is general across all is falls under productivity. So general productivity for us in 3 specific use cases, if I may, are in design review, sales and marketing, and training. And when we kind of fast forward, maybe a year from now or towards the end of this year, we see commonality for us when we look at killer app, which is how do I allow first a prosumer or professional user to be able to use 3D models in an immersive way, collaborative immersive, to tell a story. And that is game-changing the way we see it. I can talk about many verticals in terms of what our customers are doing, specifically AEC. So architecture is huge. There's a lot of demand in architecture, healthcare, general manufacturing, data visualization, et cetera.
So let's pick one, just to pick on you for a second. In terms of architecture, it's a multi-layered ecosystem. There are multiple vendors who sell to architectural firms, selling different technology. So what's your go-to-market strategy? If that's a killer app for Meta, which we know, I think the reasons why architecture needs AR, how do you guys go about it? You're going to sell direct? You're going to build an army of direct salespeople who understand architecture? Or are you going to rely on the existing environment?
So it's all about the ecosystem and enabling everybody to win. First of all, it's content driven. The biggest value we're going to be able to extract as customers, as technology providers, as users, as developers, is where that content exists. So first part of our strategy in the ecosystem development is to partner and integrate with the content creators. So the Autodesks, PTCs, and the SOs of the world, et cetera. And that work is already happening now. So we have no intent to build a creation tool at the magnitude of some of these tools. But what do I do with that model, given that that's the promise of AR, being able to immerse yourself into a 3D model, is what we do afterwards, after we integrate with that, is how do I help someone do a design review. So if we talk, for example, the top, I would say 3 architectural firms are working with us currently. And their biggest point is scope creep, specifically with, let's say, a developer or an investor. So someone building a commercial building, it costs roughly $40,000 to build a model today. It's static in time. How do we make that more collaborative? How do we get into the details so that we don't break ground and then find out that we've missed what the intent is, and that becomes a very costly problem. So that's where I would say a killer app today is to expedite the design review cycle, not necessarily the creation cycle.
Okay. Yeah. And one of your killer apps could be sitting to your left. Bob is a Meta user with Virtual Cove, and your vision is visualizing data for a number of different applications. How do you choose where a company your size focuses your attention?
That's an excellent question. So I come from a background where, managing product lines at large companies, you go after every vertical. But as a startup, and most people in this room have the opportunity to invent something new as well with these platforms. And what it means is, as a startup, you really have to pick something to focus on really well. Even if you have a technology that applies horizontally across every industry, you've got to pick a vertical. You've got to nail that vertical, and you've got to work with, as Joe said, the ecosystem to harness, to monetize, to drive forward an innovation into other verticals. You can't do it all yourself. You have to build the right team.
But I guess you think about the fact that when a trader, who's managing billions of dollars of float, on a daily or weekly basis, can get an advantage by using your visualization tools.
Yes.
That probably makes more sense than you selling to me, who's trying to figure out how to lower my cost of acquisition for customers down to $1,000, right?
That's right. There's certain high-value use cases where a startup certainly needs to fund themselves, and you fund yourself through the highest value proposition you can find. In our case, we happen to fold together between 35 to 1,001 plots into a single, almost context unifying view, and that turns out to be a great tool for understanding complex things. So in financial markets, obviously, whoever understands the most wins. So that's a high value use case, but in other verticals, there will be intermediate value use cases as well that ought to be realized.
So your movie quote would be, "Show me the money." That's what you want.
That should be a startup's marching orders first.
Should be, yeah. So moving from your finite and focused resources to the area of infinite resources and fun, we could go over to Nike and ask the question, how does Nike think about the killer app in the athletics and sports arena?
Yeah, I think it's, I wouldn't say infinite resources. I think one thing is certainly looking to align our strategies within the company initially, and that comes from understanding this environment and what the future of it is. Certainly very grateful to John and to everyone actually to be able to sit in and kind of absorb that. I think ultimately what we end up with is a couple of things, is that how do we leverage, or what does AR look like for a company like Nike internally to help us make better product innovations, better services? And then also, what does it look like in the athletic arena for everyday athletes, for elite level athletes, as our consumers? So there's almost kind of two views for us in that respect.
Yeah, and which one do you think is more compelling? I mean, it may be difficult to determine whether it's in the way you design and manufacture your goods, maybe 3D imaging a foot to build a better running shoe, and I can do it with a phone and send it to you, or is it in helping athletes perform better by understanding where they are in terms of their workout routine or their marathon?
Yeah, I think it's both. Obviously we have existing partnerships with Meta and Dell in terms of our recent launch of our Vapor Max shoe in terms of content and delivery to the consumer and visualization, and that will continue. I think one thing we see, and we were speaking about this just earlier on, is almost the overwhelming nature of data, and being aware of that. Our experience, particularly from the elite level of sport, can be that that's already reaching a point where it isn't actually influencing action. It's being collected, but not necessarily influencing action. And I think that's a focus will be, how can augmented reality and that visualization of data, and how can that really help people with just simple things like activity behavior? I think that'll be an interesting one for us going forward.
Okay.
I
So,
might add,
go ahead, please.
sorry, first, we're honored to have Nike as a customer of ours in Virtual Cove and so on. A couple of examples really related to that. I think there's the longer term killer app. So we have, can't really name them, but we have a professional basketball team that is working with us, and one of their star athletes is saying, if you can immerse me into reviewing film and I can see what the defender was thinking or about to do, that is game changing. And that's, again, with the promise of immersive AR for us. That's not today's application, possibly, but it kind of goes to that sort of cognitive perception of how much more we can glean out of a 3D model, an experience, rather than data and information, and that's game changing.
Yeah, the NBA is a huge data collector. I mean, do you have an idea of how many cameras are instrumenting a given NBA game? Do you know that number? I think it's quite substantial.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And IBM Watson's been used to analyze how NBA play takes place, and so if these three things happen, this next thing is going to logically happen. So yeah, I understand that that'd be a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next thing that I want to talk about is sort of time and traction. Vic, if you're talking about selling dresses, which is a wonderful pursuit for you, I think it's a good idea. Is it too early? What makes you know or be aware of whether or not it's the right time to deliver that kind of technology?
Oh, you mean through an AR platform?
Yeah.
I guess it depends on sort of what the customer wants. The thing is, if you expect them to wear these glasses every day and then we're still not there yet, and if you expect them to kind of use their current smartphone as like a way to get them more interested in like buying or merchandise for shopping, then I think that's something that's already happening. And I think the question is that we want to answer is that how can we integrate this technology that doesn't distract the user, right? And that's really important. Right now a lot of the stuff is out there, but some of it's kind of distracting and some of it's not very easy to use. And so I think looking at apps that sort of kind of help with that. Like for example, like Snapchat is very interesting because they have a really good kind of a customer base, right, with the young people. And the reason why they have them is because the way their app works for the AR chats or whatever, it's easy to use, it's user friendly, and it's not very very intense, and it's like the amount of information is being shown to the user. And I think if we can approach it from a very minimalistic perspective, that would really enable people to sort of use these kind of apps more.
Right. You also sort of mentioned another VC maxim, which you may not be aware of, but it's basically where do you fish? Where the fish are. And that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
You go to Snapchat, there's a young audience. They've been trained to operate in a certain way, and so the way you want them to function is not too far a step for them to take, right? And Joseph, what do you think about time and traction? Because you're getting traction right now, and as you said, there's near term and there's longer term. So how do you parse that?
ROI. So our customers today are telling us that step one, visualization of a high fidelity model allows for much more rapid design review cycles, lower 3D printing costs, or higher conversion on a sales conversation, etc. We have folks like Stanley Black & Decker or Thermo Fisher, etc., that are doing exactly that. Large equipment, want to sell it, cost millions of dollars. Can I put my customer into an experience and have a sales conversation? So I would say that's where the low-hanging fruit is today. I think leveraging the technology, understanding the common use case that makes it easier for an average office worker to kind of rethink productivity is next for us by the time content's available for consumers to start adopting at scale.
Okay. And right now, Bob, at this point in time, with the customer interaction that you've had, what is the most exciting application of your technology that you've seen?
Certainly. So,
what was the big aha? What shocked somebody more than you expected?
Traction really depends on the value proposition you're offering someone. So in our case of data visualization, helping people find an opportunity to teach more effectively, where teaching has relatively lower budgets. It's an exciting topic. It's not the first one. But in, say, financial markets, where people are quite literally competing based on who has the most and best information in their head and understands the most, by helping people, by giving them an edge in that space, it's an extremely high value proposition. So you can almost envision a rank-ordered list of segments, use cases to go after based on the value of the problem that you're solving. And for us, that's financial services, investment services.
Couldn't you just spend all your time in the commodities and the futures markets and just do nothing but that?
Personally, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm also a technologist at heart, so I want to help. I do see a future where everyone in a wide array of applications has the benefit of this kind of technology. So you have to balance. I would have fun trading the markets. I would also have fun seeing technology come into the world.
Okay. Ian, if you don't mind, I want to shift gears with you, and I want to ask you to take off your Nike hat and put on your consumer hat, and think about what do you, as a consumer, think would be the killer app for you in the AR space?
I think go back to something I mentioned earlier, which was motivation and just ensuring that the experience can evolve. I think that's one issue. It's almost become. Collecting data is very easy, or becoming increasingly easy. What that means to me as a consumer is becoming harder to rationalize and harder to continue to act upon and modify my behavior. So I find that very interesting. If I was to take that hat off and say, as a consumer, I want to be able to interact with as much data as possible, but I need it to evolve with me and for me to be able to look through what I want to look through and ignore what I don't want to see. And I think, at the end of the day, for Nike, we're really interested in what are the barriers to human performance, and it feels like this environment is certainly one of those things that can knock away at a bunch of those barriers, which are, changing activity behaviors, motivation, all the way up to the elite level of coaching and talent ID, and there's a lot of opportunity.
Right, and from your perspective, performance in sports with Nike is not a monolithic pursuit. You can't look at it through a single lens, if you will, pun intended. You need to think about IoT, right? That's a big part of what you guys are doing as well, right?
Yeah, and we think of performance very generally, even when we're thinking about athletic performance. Our founder added an asterisk to our core message, which is if you have an athlete, you deliver innovation to all athletes, but if you have a body, you're an athlete. So we do think very broadly, and it's not just running faster or jumping higher.
Okay. So we're going to go around. I'm going to hand this question to each of you, but then you can also wrap up with whatever other comment you want to make. So Vic, if you could have your killer app, and you spent enough time in this space now to think about it, besides buying clothing, what would you like to do?
I think one of the things I've been thinking about was in their surgery environment, where doctors are, let's say you're using an endoscope or something to view a surgery, and a lot of times I've seen pictures of surgeons or doctors where they're wearing these huge helmets and they have to look at through these large lenses to basically see what they're trying to do surgery on, and they're trying to probe with their tools. But if we can integrate that with some smart glass that could sort of combine the endoscope with their glasses, I think that'd be a really cool idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joe, what's your idea?
Well, I definitely second that notion. If we can change something like healthcare, save lives, that would be a worthwhile cause, of course. And we have many hospitals and partners doing that. For us, from a technology company, I would say if we can empower productivity in a different way, and that is sort of what we're obsessed about, I would almost say that we can, technology took us from flat screens to a mouse, Windows and mouse, to touch screens, and now for us it's kind of putting your hand through the screen and reaching that content and changing how you tell a story and how you interact with it. That's killer app. That's what we're working on. That's what you should expect from Meta. I would like also to kind of picture equals 1,000 words. We have an example with Nike, a video, if we can show that before the end of the panel. I think that kind of drives what's here and now, though, around design review.
Okay, we'll do that when we get to the end.
Yeah.
Bob, what's your notion outside of data visualization? So put that aside.
That's the obvious one for me.
Yeah.
But when I take a step back and I look at some of the patterns we're seeing, what's the unifying theme that anyone in the audience here could take away and do something with? It's really these devices, especially the high fidelity devices, provide an ability to quite literally hack the brain's ability to understand things. We've applied it in one area, but I believe that can be applied in so many areas. And we'll see upgrades in each. You can imagine the kind of suite of applications that quite literally transforms productivity. and that's very important.
You reminded me when we think about data visualization in terms of being a killer app. I don't know if a lot of people around when Windows first came out, and when it was actually a CGA product and then a VGA product, and it was really a piece of crap. Xerox Ventura was infinitely better, and slowly after that, the Macintosh came along and made it look even better. But Windows was garbage. And the only thing that got Windows adopted, do you know what it was? It was Excel. Because Excel looked so much better than Lotus. They had better graphs, they had color graphs, it was really easy to do, and that changed it. And that's when really Windows became a productivity tool in the office, environment. So, you're onto something. There's a good opportunity there. Okay, did you want to run a video, Joe?
I think that would be great.
Is that queued up? John, can we do that?
It starts with a question.
Load women size 8.
Followed by an idea on how to make things simpler, better, or more beautiful.
Approximate shape from sketches.
But it's not just what it looks like.
Load cross-terrain sequence.
It's how it works. Which means trying. And failing. And trying again. To be a designer means not being bound by the limits of your tools, but instead,
Expand box.
being inspired by them.
Show me the upper.
So that you can focus on what only you can do. Being creative. Being curious. And being critical. Exploring the union between function and form. Until suddenly you know.
Optimize cushion pattern for terrain.
That's it.
And when you're ready to share your work, make sure everyone can see that the world is a little simpler, better, and more beautiful.
So in summary, it's really quite easy. It's just about making magic and doing the impossible. Right?
That's a killer app.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody.